The sharp sound of a ceramic coffee cup shattering across the floor silenced the entire cafe. A little girl clung to her father's leg, trembling with tears in her eyes, while a frightened young woman stood frozen as strangers stared at her with silent judgment. In that painful moment, nobody stepped forward, except one exhausted single father who had already lost almost everything life had ever given him. Before we continue this emotional journey, the Broken Smil family, if you believe hope, compassion, and second chances can still change someone's life, please like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe so more inspiring stories can reach kind hearts around the world. His name was Rowan Mercer, a 36-year-old widower whose face carried the quiet exhaustion of years spent surviving instead of living. Every morning before sunrise, he prepared breakfast for his 7-year-old daughter, Ivy, braided her untidy chestnut hair with clumsy but loving hands, and walked her to school before beginning another long shift repairing commercial air conditioning systems across the city. Since losing his wife, Maren, to a sudden illness 4 years earlier, Rowan had buried his own dreams beneath responsibilities that never seemed to end. Every paycheck disappeared into rent, school supplies, groceries, and overdue bills. Yet despite carrying invisible grief every day, he refused to teach his daughter bitterness. Instead, he reminded her that kindness was the only thing in life that became larger the more it was shared. That unusually bright afternoon, sunlight poured through the broad windows of Harbor Bean Coffee House, casting soft reflections across polished wooden tables and potted green plants. Rowan had promised Ivy a chocolate muffin after her school art competition, even though buying coffee and dessert meant delaying his own lunch. The cafe buzzed with quiet conversations, students studying beside laptops, elderly couples enjoying peaceful afternoons, and office workers escaping busy schedules. It felt like one of those rare moments when life slowed down enough for tired people to breathe again. Rowan watched Ivy proudly coloring another picture while waiting for their order, silently grateful that despite every hardship, her smile had somehow survived. Across the cafe sat a woman dressed in a simple navy blazer and light gray trousers. Her appearance was elegant without attracting attention, and she seemed determined to remain unnoticed. Her name was Celeste Arden, 40 years old, carrying herself with calm confidence that came from years of responsibility rather than privilege. Unknown to everyone inside the coffee shop, she was the founder and chief executive of one of the nation's fastest-growing social enterprises, a company employing thousands while funding shelters, education programs, and community health initiatives. Yet success had become a lonely prison. Endless meetings, public appearances, and calculated business relationships had convinced her that people often saw wealth before humanity. That afternoon she had intentionally left behind her security team and expensive car, choosing instead to spend several quiet hours alone, hoping to remember what ordinary life felt like. The peaceful atmosphere shattered when a hurried customer accidentally collided with a server carrying hot drinks. Coffee splashed across the floor, cups crashed into pieces, and confusion erupted. In the chaos, another customer falsely accused Celeste of causing the accident simply because she had stood up to avoid the spill. His voice grew louder with every accusation, attracting curious eyes from every corner of the cafe. Several people immediately assumed he must be telling the truth. Phones quietly appeared, ready to record another embarrassing public confrontation. The frightened server looked overwhelmed, terrified that she would lose her job. Celeste remained remarkably composed, but the sadness in her eyes revealed something deeper than embarrassment. She had become painfully familiar with being misunderstood. Rowan watched everything unfold while Ivy squeezed his hand. He noticed details everyone else ignored: the spilled tray balanced awkwardly, the server's trembling hands, and the direction from which the collision had actually happened. He knew what injustice looked like because life had introduced him to it many times before. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, not because he recognized the woman, but because silence in the face of cruelty had always haunted him since losing his wife. Calmly and respectfully, he explained exactly what he had witnessed. His steady voice carried no anger, only honesty. The cafe slowly grew quiet as several customers realized they had judged too quickly. The accusing man muttered an apology before leaving in embarrassment. The frightened server burst into relieved tears, while Celeste simply looked at Rowan with quiet gratitude, surprised that a complete stranger had defended someone who offered him nothing in return. As the tension faded, Rowan returned to Ivy, believing the incident had ended. He accepted his coffee, smiled gently at the nervous server to reassure her, and prepared to leave. He never expected anything in exchange for doing what he considered ordinary decency. Yet Celeste could not stop thinking about the weary father whose kindness had cost him precious time without asking for recognition. She observed the worn work boots, the patched backpack carrying Ivy's schoolbooks, and the tenderness with which he wiped chocolate crumbs from his daughter's face. Those small gestures reminded her of the father she had lost decades earlier, a humble teacher who had once told her that character revealed itself most clearly when nobody important was watching. Over the following days, fate quietly arranged another meeting. Rowan's aging work truck broke down outside a neighborhood community center where volunteers were organizing a family event. Unable to afford immediate repairs, he worried about missing work and disappointing Ivy again. While waiting for a mechanic, he offered to help volunteers unload donated supplies simply because his hands were free. To his surprise, Celeste arrived moments later, still dressed modestly, introducing herself only as someone supporting the charity. Neither mentioned the coffee shop at first. They spent hours arranging tables, serving lunches, and helping children paint colorful murals under bright afternoon skies. Rowan noticed how naturally she listened to lonely elderly visitors and encouraged shy children without revealing any hint of authority. Celeste noticed how Rowan never sought attention despite quietly solving every problem around him. Weeks passed before Rowan accidentally discovered the truth. During a city recognition ceremony honoring community volunteers, enormous screens displayed photographs celebrating philanthropic leaders. There, standing confidently before thousands, was Celeste Arden. Rowan stared in disbelief as officials described the remarkable company she had built and the millions invested into improving countless lives. His first emotion was not excitement but embarrassment. He worried that he had unknowingly crossed boundaries or treated someone important too casually. Yet when Celeste noticed him standing at the edge of the crowd with Ivy, she walked directly toward them, ignoring cameras, reporters, and executives waiting nearby. She thanked Rowan publicly, not for defending a wealthy executive, but for defending a frightened human being before knowing who she was. Her words echoed across the gathering, reminding everyone that genuine integrity never asks about social status before choosing compassion. The recognition transformed more than either expected. Celeste invited Rowan to help develop apprenticeship programs within her company for struggling single parents seeking stable employment. She had spent years designing charitable initiatives from conference rooms, but Rowan understood challenges from lived experience. Together they visited neighborhoods often ignored by successful corporations, meeting fathers and mothers carrying invisible burdens remarkably similar to Rowan's own. Ivy gradually became friends with children whose parents found hope through the new program. Watching families rebuild their lives reminded Rowan that pain did not always disappear, but it could become the foundation upon which someone else's future was built. Even as opportunities improved, Rowan still carried grief for Marin. Some afternoons he visited the small hillside cemetery where wildflowers swayed gently beneath blue skies. Instead of apologizing for moving forward, he began thanking her memory for teaching him how to love without conditions. Celeste also confronted wounds hidden beneath professional success. She admitted that years of leadership had isolated her from ordinary human connection. Titles had earned respect but not always trust. Rowan's spontaneous act of kindness had reminded her that authentic relationships begin when people see hearts before achievements. If this story has touched your heart so far, please support it by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing to Broken Smil so more people can discover the power of compassion and hope. Before the story ends, tell us in the comments about one moment when a stranger's kindness changed your life, or one act of kindness you will never forget. Months later, Harbor Bean Coffee House hosted a community celebration honoring local volunteers.